where she speaks from, like, for example, her sit down with Destiny during the Change My Mind, the whole time, at least to me, was glaringly obvious she was fishing for, well, woke is a catch-all. And it just yeah, and
Well, and so we have different
you
views
know?
on that because
Yeah.
it's funny when I remember watching that video, or it was playing on the background because I work from home. So I listened to like a lot of, again, David Packman, Brian Tyler Cohen, Sam Cedar, Destiny Vosh, all these people, Chris Wallace. I get a lot of my news and commentary while I'm working in the background. And I remember that conversation with Destiny. And I actually, for the most part, I was really impressed because this is an issue that Destiny and I have disagreed with in private as well, because I think that I think he's completely wrong. And we could probably get into that at a separate time, but I think he's completely wrong about the woke orthodoxy thing. Cause when we have thousands of campuses
That's
in
gonna
the
have to be
United,
a separate discussion because
yeah, on the
I'm gonna
United,
disagree with
in the
you.
United, sure, in the United States, when we have thousands of campuses, and you can only cite me 5 or 10 examples of a professor getting pressure or whatever, damn it, the biologist guy. Now I'm blanking on his name, not Sam Harris, but you know who I'm talking about. Brett Weinstein.
Brian
You
Weinstein
need
and
you
his
need to be
brother Eric
bringing
Weinstein.
you're going to have to bring about 100 of those for me to even be open to the idea. I think he overstates it. I think he dramatically overstates.
Well, I mean, just to kind of sidebar a minute. I mean, Bill O'Reilly was talking about wokeness on college campuses and it being an issue at 15 to 20 years ago. So I mean,
Yeah, but I
this
don't
has
think
been
that that's
going on for a long time. Yeah.
yeah, but I don't think the fact that a well established, conservative mouthpiece talking about this, Bill O'Reilly, 20 years ago, I don't think that that's necessarily proof of that, because I think Bill O'Reilly would be saying that if at any point he confronts a
Well,
liberal opinion that disagrees with him.
it's at least evidence that it's escalated, right? So if there's evidence that this existed 15, 20 years ago and everybody was scoffing and laughing about it, and now it's
So
so
no,
known that
actually,
even my boomer parents know about it. I mean,
well, no. See, that's the thing. I don't think that that's sufficient evidence of it. I think it could be evidence of it, but
okay.
then you would need to bring the receipts, because basically what you're saying is, hey, look, these people are murmuring and gasping. It must be proof of a fire. It may not be. It may be proof of
Well, let me
something else
ask you this.
entirely.
Let me ask you this then. So, first of all, we'd probably, if we would have had this discussion, which we don't really have to have it now, but I would ask you to define too far. So, in my
Well, no,
opinion,
I would have to have you do that, because that's the positive claim. It's conservatives saying that wokeness has gone too far. I would need proof that it has. You can cite specific examples, and I may agree or disagree that this is
okay,
so, like, for example, and this wasn't a college issue, but do you remember the case of that one girl who was going into college like a year or two ago, and like when she was a freshman in high school, somebody caught her on Snapchat saying the N word when she was rapping a lyric, and then
yes,
somebody
yeah,
sat on that tweet. That's an example
okay.
of wokeness going entirely too far. That was just cruel that
Well,
you weaponized that
well,
three.
that's kind of what I mean, right? Like, yeah, I know, I get what you're saying. Like, I'm making the positive claim, but the only reason I would want to kind of catch your threshold is because my example of wokeness going too far may not be your threshold. So, for example,
Sure, sure.
in my opinion, someone doesn't need to be canceled off college campus for it to go too far for me. It's like, so just to give you an example, my good friend is a coach for his son's little league football team.
Okay.
He's not allowed to refer to the team as the boys because they haven't chosen their gender identity yet.
Okay.
And they're 9. So to me, nobody's getting canceled. Nobody's being kicked off campus. Nobody's being fired for voicing a different opinion. But to me, that's an example of wokeness going too far. You follow
And
what
I
I'm saying?
think that you could easily make the case for that, especially since, boys and guys, whatever, can be such a non-gendered phrase. Like, how you can look at a
Yeah,
group of guys and girls and be, hey guys, how's it going? And you're not
right.
actually meaning people with penises or people who identify as boys as a gender role. It's just a generic catch-all. Completely understand that. Totally sympathetic for it. You and I could probably agree on 10,000 different instances. What I would simply say, though, is number one, how big of a deal is that in the grand scheme of things? Number two, how frequent is that deal? If you want to say, look, this particular instance is annoying, it's a problem, and it shouldn't,
Well, I
and
think
it well, hang on, and it shouldn't
sure.
become more common than what it is. we would probably completely agree.
Okay.
But if you're one of those conservatives who are like, oh my God, this is apocalyptic, this is the end of the world, no, like no, we would absolutely not
No,
agree.
but I
And
think
so,
but I think there's something to be said about, well, first of all, I don't believe slippery slope is fallacy. I believe that it is true. I believe that if you don't voice enough objection to some of these things, they will escalate. And I think there is something to be said about the Department of Education, which is a government entity, um, implementing policy that seems to provoke or incentivize left wing orthodoxy, such as pronoun implementation, not using gender inclusive language like guys, or the boys, right?
so
And just as a sidebar to that, I mean, if we are for the abolition of gendered language or genders in general, I think it's the most left wing position to be like, hey, we should be saying hey guys because it's so gender neutral, right? Like it's completely abolishing the idea of
well,
men and women when you say something like that. So,
Well,
but
number one, I don't know how much or and how popular gender abolition is. Like, I know Vosh is a fan of it. I've not committed to it as far as I know. Destiny
well,
hasn't either. I well, but here's my thing.
wait, gender inclusivity. So what I'm saying is like if the position is to be super gender inclusive or for there to be less delineation between men and women, then having something that is universally gender inclusive, like "Hey guys," to me would be a great left wing, left
Well,
wing.
well, here's
Yeah,
the thing. I
yeah,
personally think it's because you got to understand. I grew up in the South in a red state. I lived in Kentucky most of my life, and then moved to North Carolina recently. So I've only ever lived in red states. So hey guys, and growing up in a rural red state, I mean, there were no trans people of which I'm aware that I went to school with. So a lot of the parlance was tailored accordingly to basically mostly cis straight people whose sex and gender in 90 to 99% of the time were in sync, right? So hey guys was gender inclusive, excuse me, in rural Kentucky when we used it. Now language evolves over time. So I'm not making the commitment that look, I'm saying objectively in every situation, in every place, at any given time, all 50 states, that guys is going to be objectively determined to be gender inclusive. I understand how some people, how a trans person might find it uncomfortable or offensive because on paper, guys refers to boys, refers to males, whatever. We just in a lot of places, it's gender inclusive. So I'm not even getting into that. I'm saying I personally agree with you. But as far as like the going back to the Department of Education, you know, inculcating some sort of like progressive orthodoxy, didn't they do that when during integration? Like progressive orthodoxy, like so society has norms and mores that makes its way into education policy and government policy. When we forced schools to integrate, that was progressive orthodoxy. That was opposed by conservatives, not and championed by progressives. Progressives wanted to integrate and say, no, you can't treat black people differently. You have to have them in the same school. You have to educate them the same way. You have to address them the same way, or you're going to get fired. That was progressive orthodoxy. I assume you would support that, right?
sure.
So 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 is it you object to progressive orthodoxy period or just in this case?
I would argue that progressive orthodoxy has changed drastically.
Well, sure, but what I'm saying is I think you would need to make the case to me that in this case, like to say it's progressive orthodoxy to me is
When
not a
I
value
mean,
judgment.
I would be, I'm using progressive, I mean, colloquially, because I think we all know what the modern progressive ideologue is, as opposed to what progressiveness years ago, which would be argued now as classical liberalism. I mean, what is wokeness, right? So wokeness is the idea that traditional liberalism isn't enough to fix the blights of society, and we need more. And you're woke to those additional changes, or those, or what is necessary. Can we agree on that?
I don't know if that's the definition at all because what my understanding of what woke is that you are aware of various systemic iniquities and you think that society and government should play a role in addressing these
Right, because
iniquities.
they haven't been addressed through the lens of classical liberalism.
Right, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
so and so
Yeah, we
50
agree on
years
the
ago
definition.
and so 50 years ago, you would have been woke to be an integrationist. because
Fair.
50, right. So what I'm getting at, it's not a gotcha. I'm just saying
No, I know. I'm saying that what I'm saying is fair, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that this version of that
cor-
orthodoxy is
correct,
yeah,
correct. And so
yeah.
so that's what I was getting at. So that's why when conservatives say progressive orthodoxy, that means nothing to me because as far as I'm concerned, for the most part, for most of American history, progressives have been right in terms of civil and social issues. When conservative, not Republicans, it was conservatives that wanted to keep slavery a practice. They were wrong. They were on the wrong side of history. It was progressives that wanted to emancipate the slaves. It was progressives who wanted to give women the right to vote. So on major social issues, the progressives have just been right. Now, if you want to make the case that, yeah,
Wasn't it majority of Republicans who voted for women's right to vote
Republicans,
in
but not
Congress?
conservatives. There was the party switch. When we're talking about conservatives, we're talking about people who wanted to maintain institutions
There
as they
was
were.
there was no party switch. Come on,
There,
Ramon.
there, there was, buddy. There was,
Stop.
there was,
All
there
right,
was,
another
there,
discussion. Another
there
discussion.
was.
Yeah.
But you're conflating party with political movement. Conservatives,
I think you're over.
I'm not. Are you telling me that it was the
No, no, no.
progressive?
No. I'm not, and I'm not being critical. I'm saying I think you're putting more weight behind what I meant by like progressive orthodoxy than I probably meant. What I
Well,
mean
no, no,
was
no. I'm not. That's
okay,
what I mean. That's what I mean, though. You
sure.
would in a conversation about this, you would have to make the case that this instance of progressive orthodoxy is wrong. Therefore, the education department and government should not be inculcating it in schools because what I typically hear is what you said. That's what I mostly hear is
You
there
can't
shouldn't be.
wait, you can't do that though. You can't shift the positive claim to me when the action is coming from a particular group just because historically this group made what you would argue now as the right decision. You understand what I'm
I
saying?
did, but I didn't. I
Why do
didn't
I have
make.
to prove a negative just because progressives have a history or your idea
Well,
of progressives have a history of making positive choices?
no. But I didn't make the claim. You said that it was wrong. That the education department should not be encouraging progressive orthodoxy. That's a
Let's
positive.
simplify it. Let's simplify it. If you make an action and then I disagree with that action and I say that that action is going too far, why does it fall on me to explain to another individual as to why your action goes too far
But
when you
I'm
follow what I'm
not.
saying?
I didn't advocate in this conversation for the education department to do anything. I'm saying if you wanted to have that conversation, look, this is what's going on. I disagree with it. I don't think this is right.
Mhm.
You would have to when you can't just appeal. You would for me for to have a productive conversation with me. You couldn't just appeal to progressive orthodoxy because then I'll turn around and say, "Hey, crooked, 9 times out of 10, progressive orthodoxy has been right, and in 9 times out of those 10 situations, you would ultimately have agreed with that too." And so you would have to say, okay, I'm talking about this particular movement. And then if you wanted me to okay, why do you support a trans inclusive or movement in education? Could try to make a case like that to you. But
Okay. Sure.
hearing conservatives say, and again, this isn't just this is a common thing from right wing
Yeah. So
from
hey,
thought leaders.
I'm gonna interrupt you just a little bit
Sure.
because I think the where this all just stemmed from, as I think you're trying to prescribe opinions of mine to the boilerplate responses from conservatives. And perhaps that's my fault by using a phrase such as progressive orthodoxy. What I mean when I say that, and which was going to be the second part of my sentiment when I was voicing it, is that I believe my opinion is that I see a extremist perspective, political, cultural perspective that is mainstream. And I see that mainstream political perspective being implemented institutionally and governmentally to the detriment of what I would feel, what I value, or the values I feel that built this country culturally and to this point are being threatened by that extremism. And I view sweeping changes to the way we are allowed to address each other based on a small percentage of the population that may or may not be trans in a school that may or may not have trans people because of a broad policy change across the entire Department of Education. Does that make sense?
Yes, that is much better phrased than what I typically hear from conservative thought leaders when they appeal to progressive orthodoxy. Because what I'm hearing from you is you recognize that is a time and a place where it's within the purview of the Department of Education to tell traditionalists who don't want to move the needle on social progress to get fucked. We're doing it anyway, like segregation versus integration, for example. You just think that in this particular case, that it's too um,
It's too
too
sweeping.
sweeping
Yeah, and it's too
for
much.
right for what you think is a relatively niche issue. Now, that's a much more that is a much more consistent worldview and one we could have a conversation about, and we should have a conversation. So we'll also put that on the immigration thing. Let's talk about
Okay,
that.
okay.
So
So a lot of
getting
things. We got a
yeah, so
lot on
getting
the
back to
schedule.
getting all the way back to Aaron and Destiny. When I
Yeah.
heard that conversation, I like the fact that she challenged him on that. Like, okay, look, what do you mean by go too far? Because you're citing a couple of examples. We have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of colleges, not just teachers and instances, colleges who themselves employ hundreds upon hundreds of teachers. So we're talking about like a statistical blip that you're citing, to say that this is a big issue. What's your case? And so I like the fact that she confronted him head on in public is somebody with Destiny's pedigree.
So easy though. It's such come on, that's the easy position. Oh, show me instances. Show me hundreds of instances where this
Yeah,
is
it is
come on.
easy to
It's
demand
such a yeah.
proof of a claim.
I
Yeah, no, yeah, but that's the
have
thing.
a discussion though. Have a discussion about it because the instances that are relevant are pretty bad.
But
And if
she
you know,
even
and my point is, wait, hang on. My point is that any amount of experience in the real world, which I would argue she is still lacking,
I think you'd
re-
be surprised, but okay.
reveals quite a bit of these issues. Well, I mean, look, she's young, she's young, so I mean, it's
This you are correct twice, sir. She is in fact young and young. I will not
yes,
dispute that.
I mean, and but from what I'm hearing, from what I hear when she
You
speaks
hear a
about these
certain
issues,
naivete from
yeah,
her.
yes, that's all.
Yeah.
And again, she's probably gonna hate me for these
No, I
attacks
actually
on.
after listen, I'm going to try to set up a conversation with Destiny for you, but I'm also you and Aaron. You and Aaron need to step into the ring. She's
Sure.
fun to spar with. You guys would have a good time. And actually, at the very end, I think that there would be a love hate dynamic there where you would be a good foil for her. But here's what I would say on
Do you
Destiny.
mind do you mind if I just kind of finish
Sure, sorry, go ahead.
just that point? So when I was watching that discussion with her and Destiny, from almost the minute she sat down, I literally said to myself, on my kids, I said she's going to say she feels woke is a catch-all. And sure enough, at the end of the discussion, her response was, I kind of feel like everybody's using wokeness as this catch-all for X, Y, and Z. And what does wokeness really mean? And I feel like that is what everybody pivots to when really it's very easy to see what people mean when they say wokeness colloquially. And it has a lot to do with what I was talking about earlier in reference to, hey, first of all, people are getting in trouble for voicing objections to trans pronouns and things of that nature. And the second part of that is if people are indeed afraid to speak, if there is indeed a fear, which you hear from a lot of fact, I got a lot of friends and family who are also teachers. They are afraid, and it doesn't even come from them being leftist. A lot of these schools are afraid of lawsuits. I mean, there was one trans kid in my cousin's school who she's a principal at, and the parents who were lesbians, they were constantly up at that school saying my trans kid is not getting enough attention, and they are petrified of a media storm.
Media torrent.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
They're afraid of the media. They're afraid of a lawsuit. And if people are scared to talk, how do you quantify that? And if you're going to deny that there is a fear there, I can understand demanding evidence, but it's going to be a difficult thing to prove unless you have some kind of experience
S-
and unless you know some people. That's all I'll
So,
say. Yeah.
sure. So again,
Sorry.
as far as the no, no, as far as the definition, I just disagree. I think that it's perfectly reasonable when you're about to have a discussion, not even a debate, like a discussion like you and I are having, just really civil discussion, to ask somebody with some degree of charitability and good faith, not, listen, I demand a dictionary tier definition, but for somebody to say, look, before we get into it, with a term like woke, which I would argue has been, it means whatever somebody wants it to mean at any given time, kind of like critical race theory. That's another one where we know for a fact that people behind the popularization of that phrase, Christopher Rufo, flat out said the goal is to pack everything into that phrase so it can be an effective messaging weapon. And the right isn't the only one to do this, by the way. Any effective political movement will weaponize speech and will distort its meaning for politically efficacious outcomes. I think it's perfectly fair to say, hey, with a phrase like woke, what exactly do you mean? Or can you clarify for me? Because I may
That's not what she did though.
well, hang on. But what I'm saying is, she is right to say it is a catch-all, because it is very often. Because, like, for example, you referred to woke just in your example, when about trans issues. Well, the Brett Weinstein thing, which was the single biggest topic discussed between Destiny and Aaron, and also Destiny and President Sunday, had nothing to do with trans people. It's about black people. So that's what I mean. Like, it is a complex term, and I think it's perfectly
It's
fair
all
to say,
encompassing. It is, and it is, but it is though. But I don't take issue with the claim with trying to clarify, like you said. I think that's perfect. Trying to clarify, hey, when you're talking about woke, what are you talking about? You're talking about XYZ? Okay, great. Where are these issues? Oh, you heard about this, you saw that. Great. When I have a problem is when people try to pivot to wokeness is a catch-all as
to appeal to its ambiguity. You
right,
felt she appealed
appeal
to
and to discredit the argument that it has gone too far
right.
because, hey, woke is a catch-all and it depends on who's talking about it.
So
And
then so
yeah.
then maybe the problem was, then I'll grant you this, because it's been months since I've watched this conversation with him. Then maybe Destiny should have defined his term at the beginning, or Aaron should have asked him at the beginning what he meant, or when it was clear that they were having a catch all, one of them should have said, "Hey, what do you mean?" Or, "Okay, here, Aaron, this is what I mean."
Or he
Fair
should have
enough.
been Destiny instead of not being Destiny because she has a cute face.
Hey, you! Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, and I hope that you did, please hit the like and subscribe buttons below. And if you absolutely hated the video, the best revenge for you is also to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. That'll teach me. If you want to share an opinion or share some feedback, go ahead and leave a comment, all right? 2023 is a year of change, hence the aggressive rebrand and commitment to new content. Inspired by my friends Luke Beasley and STV Philly, my personal goal for this channel is to hit 40,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So I'm hoping you'll do me a solid by spreading the word and the videos to potential fans and hate watchers alike. And in the meantime, we'll be pondering politics again with you very soon.